All right. Well, we have Dr. Outdoors, Dr. Melissa Sundermann here with us on Medicine Redefined. Thanks so much for coming on to the podcast.
Well, thanks for the invitation. Dr. Outdoors is thrilled about
Yes,
this.
yes. We are so excited to delve into this topic. I mean, throughout our episodes, we've definitely touched on the idea of nature as medicine and the different benefits that come with it because it's been a hot topic. But I think you're that expert that can really tie all of these different benefits together and the different methods of which we can really embrace nature and kind of return to our roots, so to speak. But before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about your background into medicine and how you sought out and found nature to be so healing.
Absolutely. So, my venture into medicine started many years ago. I'm in my mid 50s now. So, bear with me in my story. I'll try to make it as succinct as possible. But I knew from an early age I wanted to become a doctor. And I didn't have anyone in my family that was even in medicine. I didn't have anyone who was a nurse or a doctor, but it was just this calling that I had, the curiosity that I had. And so I pursued that dream and was pre-med in undergrad. I did research in a lab at the University of Michigan for a couple of years, and that really solidified that I loved the research, but I really wanted to work with people. So I went to medical school, and I went to medical school at Michigan State. I am a DO. That stands for Doctor of Osteopathy, but the way that the universe works, that stands for Doctor Outdoors. It's like, how did this happen? But it's perfect. And as a DO, I was thought to think about the body as an integrated system from a very early stage of my career, and so that curiosity of how everything is interconnected has always stuck with me. And I ended up doing residency in internal medicine. So I really enjoyed learning about a little bit about everything and going into primary care where I could develop long relationships. And so throughout my career, I did outpatient. I also was a hospitalist, so I took care of acutely ill patients. And about 2006, 2007, when I was working at the University of Michigan, I really developed this curiosity for what encompassed wellness,
Mm.
and both personally and professionally. And that led me to do a year-long faculty scholars program at the University of Michigan in integrative medicine. And that opened up my heart, it opened up my eyes about all of the ways of healing that went beyond Western medicine. And I learned so much through my medical training, but this took me one step further. And so I learned about traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine and Reiki and
Hmm.
acupuncture. And not that I was specifically trained in those, but I knew what they were about. And so if my patients were utilizing complementary and alternative ways of healing, I could respect that. I could help guide them. And I had a better understanding of what they were going through. And then from that program, I ended up doing a professional training in mind body medicine with the Center of Mind Body Medicine in James Gordon. And incredible program. In fact, Dr. Gordon has spoken at our American College of Lifestyle Medicine conference a couple times as a keynote. So just wonderful training. And fast forward, just that curiosity. I think that's what medicine is all about: is remaining curious and wanting to learn. And in about 2018, when my kids were going off to college, I have two kids who are now 22 and 24. When they went off to college, I felt like I had a little bit more time to be a little bit more selfish in my career. And so I was deciding if I was going to go back to a fellowship, and I went down to Google of all places and started plugging in words that resonated with me. So it was wilderness medicine
Mm.
and wellness medicine, and the algorithm popped up. You might like lifestyle medicine. And
Right.
up until that point, I heard about lifestyle medicine. And when I read the pillars of lifestyle medicine, it truly like felt like coming home to me because it was everything that I had been practicing for myself and wanting to offer my patients. And then I found that there was this whole group of people, of individuals who believed in the same principles and the same approach I did. I became board certified in lifestyle medicine in 2019, and I have not stopped. I have found my people, my calling. I'm very involved in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine in some leadership roles. And I am the founding chair of the Nature as Medicine subcommittee for the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. We founded this about a little bit over a year ago. It's been a blast. Dr. Outdoors is just in her element. And
Yeah.
well, that's me. And I transitioned out of conventional medicine a couple of years ago to really pursue my passion for lifestyle medicine, longevity medicine,
Hmm.
integrative medicine, functional medicine. And I was working at a wellness resort called Canyon Ranch
Yeah.
in the Berkshire Mountains of Massachusetts for a couple of years. And then in March, I transitioned to a concierge practice that is solely focused on the type of medicine getting to underlying root cause of disease and illness. And so it goes to show you that at whatever age you can try something new, you can keep learning and have a blast along the way.
I love it. I see a lot of your passions intertwined with mine and Altamash's for sure. And when I found out about lifestyle medicine, which was probably 3 years ago, actually in the beginning of this podcast, it was like that aha moment where it's, hey, finally, like something that can bring together the coaching aspect and the long-term aspect of healing and really delving into different niches too. So there's
Mhm.
definitely this need for it, and we've had Dr. Beth Frades on this podcast, Dr. Robin Tiger, who I know you meet with at these conferences and are in
Yes.
panels with. So it's just so awesome to see how you also carved out that niche, which I'm also interested in. So you talked about having an integrative medicine fellowship as well as doing a mind body course. Now, within those
Mhm.
courses, were you able to extract nature as medicine through that? Because I feel like, to my understanding, when you're learning integrative medicine, a lot of it has to do with maybe herbal remedies or energy,
Mhm.
acupuncture, like you mentioned. So, how did you take those concepts and translate them maybe more so to what your passions truly were?
Yeah, so I think I couldn't put a finger on it quite that
Mm,
early, right? As defining it as nature as medicine, even though you're absolutely right. I mean, we look at all these herbal remedies that have been around for centuries about connecting with the earth,
mhm,
resonating with earth. So I knew that, but I hadn't found my voice yet,
mm,
right? I hadn't found my voice in my platform. And so what happened was in 2022, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine was calling for abstract submissions. And I knew how much nature meant to me and how much of a healing power nature has always been throughout my life. And I decided I'm going to go on a whim. I'm going to write an abstract talking about the benefits of nature as medicine and the benefits of movement in nature. And so I submitted an abstract. I had never talked about this before. And lo and behold, my abstract got accepted for a concurrent session on the big stage at ACLM, which is about 2,000 people. And even better, I mean, I say it's better now, but I was terrified at the time, was my talk was immediately following Dr. Dean Ornish and Dr. T. Colin Campbell, two of the biggest luminaries of lifestyle medicine. So after they finished in front of 2,000 people, Dr. Outdoors goes on the stage, and no one really knew who I was. And I gave this talk, which I was really nervous. I was practicing my deep breathing in the back of the room, but it went really well. And I had so many questions afterwards, and I had such a positive response that's when I decided to see if there was interest in the Nature as Medicine subcommittee, and there was an overwhelming interest, and it's been a success so far. So I think it's sometimes you find that voice, and it's the right time and the right place, and you gather that courage, and you speak to your authentic heart and your authentic self, and I was ready for it. Dr. Outdoors was ready
mhm.
to talk about what her true beliefs were.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So you mentioned that there are 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. As a great
Mhm.
refresher for myself as well as the audience, do you mind going through some of those, or all those 6 pillars, but then
Yeah.
and then we'll transition to the hopeful seventh that I know you're hoping to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So the six official pillars of lifestyle medicine, starting in no particular order of importance because they're all related. So nutrition. And like Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said many centuries ago, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And unfortunately, in today's age, in our Western diet, we've gotten away from that. So the American College of Lifestyle Medicine realizes what is on the end of your fork has tremendous power over the prevention of disease or potentially causing disease. So we advocate for a plant predominant dietary pattern. So I like to call that plant slant, plant strong, plant forward, however you
Mhm.
want to view it. Do you have to be exclusively whole food plant based? Well, if you want to, go for it. But I think that really when we're transitioning, what resonates with my patients better is to say, go plant slant. Fill your plate with mostly plants. So when we talk about plants, we're talking about fruits and vegetables and beans and whole grains and nuts and seeds and herbs and spices. So really filling the plate. We like to say eat the rainbow. The average American is fiber deficient, right? Fiber is so crucial to the health of our gut microbiome. I'm sure you've probably had some gut microbiome
Oh yeah.
experts on your podcast. We know how important the gut microbiome is. So as Dr. Will Bulsiewicz says from Fiber Fueled, try to get at
Hmm.
least 30 different plants per week. So eat the rainbow, and eat the rainbow is not M&Ms and Skittles. Eat the rainbow in the form of plants. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is exercise, physical activity. Now, when I counsel my patients, I tend to use the term movement rather than
Mm.
exercise. Now, I always love to exercise. That's just part of who I am. But for many individuals, the term exercise brings upon these feelings of dread, or it's going to be boring, or I know I should do that, but I don't enjoy it. So if we talk about movement and so many ways to move our bodies, that can sometimes take away those obstacles.
Hmm.
And so if you love to go bird watching, that's movement. If you love to dance in your house, that's movement. If you like to swim, if you like to garden. So just really opening up the vision of what movement can be. And usually we can find some form of movement that people like to do rather than calling it exercise. And we do follow the guidelines of the American College of Sports Medicine, the CDC. So the ACLM, we recommend 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week. So if you break that down into 20 to 30 minutes daily, and you can even break that down. And then we also recommend muscle strengthening activity about at least 2 times per week. Moving on to pillar number 3, sleep is medicine. So we're both physicians. I grew up in the time where we worked crazy shifts, like 36-hour shifts. And I was convinced I didn't need sleep. I was like,
Mm.
whatever, sleep is overrated. And I was so wrong. Oh my gosh. Once I learned about sleep, and Matthew Walker, who is an amazing
Hmm.
researcher and author, and sleep should be a priority, right? So we really want to aim for at least 7 hours of restorative sleep. And so practicing our sleep hygiene, really making consistent sleep patterns, and prioritizing sleep, because when we sleep and get into all of our cycles of sleep, we actually activate something called the lymphatic system, right? So we are
Right.
all familiar with our lymphatic system and are clearing out the infection, but the lymphatic system is what goes through, and it's almost like garbage trucks, ridding our brain of tangled proteins that have accumulated through the day, whether that's amyloid protein or tau protein. So sleep is a superpower. Pillar number 4, avoidance of risky substances and behaviors. So that would be smoking, excessive drinking, excessive drug use, or really any kind of. Dr. Robin Tiger and I do a lot of work together, and we talk about buffering.
Mm.
So any kind of behavior that's not serving you well. So if that's a risky substance that's not serving you well, or you're using it to escape, that can be problematic. But for some people, their escape is gambling, compulsive gambling, or compulsive shopping, or compulsive scrolling. So
Yeah.
any kind of behavior that does not serve us well, I would say, falls under that category. So risky substances and behaviors. The next pillar would be stress management, and talking about Dr. Robin Tiger,
Yeah.
my colleague. She is a stress-free MD. So learning, we all have stress in our life. I do not have a pill to take away stress, right? And stress can be a good thing, right? Every time I do a podcast, I get a little stressed and anxious, but that's a good thing because I'm going to show up as my best self because of that. But then there's other kind of stress, which is distress, and learning ways to help support and manage that. And so when I did that training in the mind body medicine, those are tools that I use myself and educate my patients on, whether that's deep breathing, that's meditation, that's practicing mindfulness. So really filling those tools in that stress management toolbox. And then the 6th official pillar is the role of positive social connection.
Mm.
We all were part of one of the largest social psychology experiments on social connection, and that was called lockdown.
Yeah.
During COVID, when we were all told to shelter in place, do not touch anyone, do not see anyone, you stay put and just stay isolated. And after a year and a half of that, we all felt this void. I know I did. And that's social connection. In fact, our current Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, is a champion of this. And he came out with a Surgeon General's advisory last May that talked about the health implications of social isolation and loneliness. Now, being alone is different than loneliness. I
Hmm.
love my alone time, right? Sometimes my kids are now kind of flown, and sometimes my husband will go away. And so I'm like, woohoo, alone time. So that's different than being lonely. And we know that social isolation and loneliness can increase mortality rates, also can increase the risk of dementia and
Hmm.
cognitive decline. And in fact, I heard a statistic not too long ago that being lonely and being socially isolated can have the same health risks as smoking 15 cigarettes per day,
Wow.
which is
Yeah.
shocking. Yeah. So, those are the six official pillars of lifestyle medicine. And I like to think of the pillars as spokes on a wheel. And I'm a biker. And I've been mountain biking, or actually, I haven't. My husband was biking one day and one of his spokes broke. Not a good thing, right? The
Right.
wheel will not revolve. So, if you think about these spokes as being equally important, and there might be times where you're like, oh, I'm really doing really well in nutrition, but not so well on the movement, but I'm doing well in sleep, to try to think of them as being interconnected and all equally important to make sure that we can revolve, properly.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely changed my everyday routine to really looking at these pillars. And I know Peter Attia is a popular physician who
Hmm.
talks about when you may be lacking in one of these. And for me today, that's sleep. I had a red eye from
Yeah.
Vegas this morning,
Oh,
and got home at 4 a.m. Had to get to work at 8, so I was like really, really,
oh
really
my
sleep
goodness.
deprived. So then for me,
Yeah.
it was, how do I double down on my nutrition? How do I double down on the movement? How do I
Hmm.
still really get these other pillars in so that I can speed up that recovery? Right. And
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
maybe 30 minutes before this recording, I went out for a 2 mile jog in the sun. And it's just incredible how getting outside, running through, by the river here in Harrisburg, having that sunshine on you just really elevates your mood and really gets you back. And I don't even feel like I'm sleep deprived anymore. I mean, we'll see what tomorrow morning brings, but it is really
Right.
incredible when you start to focus, and the synergy that these pillars have together
Yeah,
is truly incredible. Now, I know
absolutely.
you're hoping to see a seventh pillar, which will be nature. And as I was prepping for this
Hmm.
interview, I was just thinking about, benefits of nature. But it's funny because I feel like you said to spokes on the wheel that it all ties together. When you're in
Hmm.
nature, when we talk about food, getting back to our roots, right? Even
Yeah.
during the summer, going apple picking, seeing where our food comes from.
Hmm.
That's huge. That brings on gratitude, and it makes you appreciate your food more. But it also tends to lead to healthier choices. You talk about
Yeah.
movement. I mean, nature and movement, those go hand in hand. I mean, humans evolved with the
Yes.
earth, right? And so we were
Hmm.
constantly
Hmm.
gravitating towards, warmer weathers or colder climates or whatever it may be. Sleep. Now, this is interesting because I was trying to think about, well, how does, nature and sleep go together? And we just did a recent episode on grounding. And so again, we
Uh-huh.
evolved with the earth. We slept on the earth.
Yeah.
And so, if the listeners heard our last episode, it was really about how those electrons can transfer towards our body, neutralize free radicals.
Hmm.
And really, there's so many benefits to that really, really shocked me. And then we talk about risky substances. I guess, is there any data to show that being in nature tends to lead towards positive behaviors in terms of the choices we make?
Well, I think that the more that you're, in nature and connecting with the planet and breathing fresh air that's not polluted around you, you're going to want to keep it that way, right?
Right.
And I think that, just being in nature just elevates our mood. And so sometimes when we are resorting to those escapisms, right?
Hmm.
That's because we're not being present. And when you're in nature, nature is one of the places, the most I think it's probably where we can be most present, right? Because there's so much going on around you. So I'd like to say, yes, that can help that pillar. I'm going to go back to the sleep pillar
Yeah.
because another popular podcaster, Andrew Huberman, talks about early morning sunlight exposure.
Mm.
And when we go outside before the hours of 9 or 10 a.m. without wearing any glasses, because that's when the sunlight is more infrared, it's not going to be as dangerous for skin and for our eyes. And spending that time in the early morning sunlight can actually reset our circadian rhythm,
Hmm.
gets our chronobiology set, can activate our melatonin clock so that by the end of the day, our melatonin has built up. Melatonin helps us sleep and also helps regulate our cortisol and help elevates our serotonin level. So that early morning sunlight is really important. And I even tell my patients it's great if you want to go outside and move your body, walk your dog, but also if you just wanted to have a cup of tea or journal outside. And, most people don't think about that. So I'm like, just
Hmm.
go outside, just, even in the winter, put on a coat, go outside.
Absolutely. So we left off on stress here for this pillar, which
Yeah,
I think the next two go hand in hand: stress and social connection. I'm sure
yeah,
people can say,
yeah.
well, when you're out in nature, like a lot of our vacations, we tend to go to the beach, right, closer to water, closer to
Hmm.
sand,
Hmm.
or we might
Yeah,
go up in the mountains, right? But we're always seeking out places that give us peace. And a lot of the times, there's this
yeah.
serenity of landscapes that we're chasing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
right there is that connection, and then social connection. Not only doing nature with humans, right, having a running partner or traveling together, but connecting with the animals and the ecosystem around us. I
yes,
think a lot of us
yes,
forget that listening to the birds chirp, hearing the crickets at night, whatever it might be, it makes
yeah.
you realize that you're just an animal here spinning on this earth through space with everything else, right? And we're just part of this larger ecosystem. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need to come back to remember that we as humans are nature,
Hmm.
right? And that's this concept of biophilia. And
Mm.
biophilia was originally coined by Eric Fromm, a social psychologist, but most of us have heard about biophilia from E.O. Wilson. And he was a prolific writer about biophilia. Biophilia is the innate connection between all things living. So humans, animals, plants, mountains, water, everything. We are all made of carbon. We are all interconnected. So the more time that we can form that connection means we're going to care for the animals. We're going to care for our planet when we're talking about planetary health, right? Which is so important. I've got kids and maybe they'll have grandkids, and I want there to be a planet still. So I truly believe in this biophilia. The more that we can connect and respect and become in tune with all things living, we're going to take better care of it. That's where we're going to put our efforts.
100%. I don't know, Dr. Sunderman, if you listened to Lex Friedman podcast. He's
No.
okay.
Mm-mm.
So you might have heard this guy named Paul Rosalie, and he's like the real life Tarzan. And he's got these
Okay.
amazing episodes that I think you'd really love. That he talks to Lex Friedman. He basically lives in the Amazon jungle at this point. He moved there when he was like 18, 20 years old. And he wrote this book, I believe it's called Mother of God. And he really talks about biophilia and how the
Mm.
Amazon is the most central place on earth, the most biodiverse place on earth, where we don't even have names for almost millions of species that we've seen there.
Yeah.
But it's just this endless, constant cycle of life and death. And you talk about carbon, and he says, whenever you see an animal die or, whatever it might be, within an hour or two, you see it degrade. And then it gets, precipitation comes and then the rain. And you just see this cycle of life and death. And it
Yeah.
makes you feel so insignificant in the best way possible, right? Because you start to
Yeah.
value your
Yeah.
life, and just like you were talking about, being part of that bigger ecosystem. I'll definitely send you that episode. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's fascinating
Yeah.
to hear
Absolutely.
about what goes on
Yeah.
down there. Um,
Yeah.
but we now live in times where we're just moving further and further away from nature. I mean, no matter
Yeah.
where we go and what we do, we wake up and we always have four walls around us, in our cars, in our bedrooms, in our office spaces. And I think I was reading about how we may only spend 20 minutes a day outdoor. The average human does, out of the 24
Yeah,
hours.
right. The EPA actually did a study several years ago. It's probably worse now. The average American only spends 7% of their day outdoors. The
7%.
rest is spent, like you said, at home, in our workplaces, in our schools, in stores, in public transportation, automobiles. And so, that 93% of our time is spent inside buildings.
That's
And
unbelievable.
that's not what we're, bound to do. And really, when we think about it, growing up as kids, we knew this instinctively about biophilia, right?
Yeah.
We were curious about the outside and digging in dirt and
Hmm.
finding creatures and climbing trees and catching fireflies or looking for caterpillars or picking up worms or looking for the biggest worm after it rained. And so we knew that, right? And somehow as we get older, we grow away from that, unfortunately. And so it's really bringing that back, learning from our childhood, learning from our instincts that we belong in nature.
Yeah. Let's get deeper into some of these topics that may be
Yeah.
hot button issues right now. So one of them is sunshine,
Yeah.
right? So many people talk
Hmm.
about fearing the sun at this point, and there's the
Yeah.
huge, I mean, rightfully so, maybe, about putting sunscreen, but it's like the minute you go outside, you should have sunscreen on you, which I don't know. I truly don't agree with that. I think you do need at least some sort of maybe tinting, on your skin before you can really think about sunscreen. But tell me a little bit more about the relationship with the sun. You mentioned circadian rhythm. what else should people know about how we evolved with the sun and the benefits that it provides?
Right. Well, we talk about when we didn't live within walls and lamps and all these kind of things is we lived according to sunrise and sunset, right?
Yeah.
That was how our lives and our days went. And that is truly what our brains and our bodies need and gravitate to. And so really, ideally it's you wake up when the sun comes up and you go outside. We were gatherers and hunters and farmers, and that's a really healthy lifestyle and moving our body throughout the course of the day. And when it becomes sunset, you slow down, and now we've got all these bright lights everywhere and screens and blue lights that our brains are like so confused because they're like, I have this circadian rhythm I want to follow, but it's not right because there's still really bright lights. And so it's really a good idea that you dim your lights in your house by, or even light some candles, just signaling to our brains and our bodies that it's time to slow down. And we talk about melatonin and how bright light, when it shines in and goes through the suprachiasmatic nucleus to your
Hmm.
pineal gland, that produces the melatonin. If we've got all this artificial light surrounding us, that cascade cannot happen, and our brains don't know what to do because and don't want to fall asleep because of the decrease in the melatonin. And yes, sunshine, I mean, we hear, gosh, if you've had skin cancers, absolutely you need to protect your skin, but going outside and producing vitamin D is a really important thing. And vitamin D, I mean, you can take a supplement, and certain kind of mushrooms, if they're in this they get some UV radiation, could contain some vitamin D, but really the majority of vitamin D that we produce is from the skin going onto our skin. And vitamin D is almost like a hormone. It's good for our mood. It's good for our bone health. So, important to get outdoors every single day. And again, you don't want to be a sun worshiper. That's, not a good thing. I grew up
Hmm.
back in the 70s, 80s when people were, spraying oil on their skin. Not, and I don't advocate for that, but
Right.
I think that sometimes we get too scared of being in the sun. I think there's a smart way to approach it, and absolutely getting outdoors every day and following that natural circadian rhythm of the sunrise and sunset.
For sure. Now you're in Massachusetts still?
No, I'm back in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Oh, okay. Well, you're still, I guess, north, like in a northern latitude, right?
Yes,
So when winter
yes,
comes
yes.
around, it's cold. A lot of people don't want to go outside in the
Right.
cold. Sun sets even earlier than it would down south.
Yeah.
Are you making a more
Yeah.
conscious effort during those times to get outdoors?
Absolutely. And I do have a quote, Dr. Outdoors. One of our favorite quotes is, there's no bad weather, just inappropriate clothing.
Mm,
So I think that, I am from Michigan. Worked in Massachusetts. Like, we definitely have 4 seasons, and one of them is really long, called winter.
yeah.
But I'll tell you what, I mean, once you have the right attitude and the right gear, of a warm coat and mittens and gloves, it is the most spectacular time to get outdoors. And after a fresh snow, and just witnessing that and the beauty and
Yeah.
the silence, that it's wonderful. So I think a lot of people think, oh, if it's I don't go outdoors if it's below 40 degrees,
Right.
and really that's got to shift your attitude, right? And you're absolutely right, we just aren't out there as naturally, and so really making that effort. And a quote that I love, it's very short, is from Rich Roll. This
Hmm.
pertains to this a little bit, but he has a great quote: "Mood follows action."
Yes.
And so often we have it reversed: action follows mood. Like, oh, I'll do that once I feel like it. And so often I mean, we're amazing at making excuses for behavior change, right? I'm the best at, that too. And so if we are constantly waiting oh yeah, maybe I'll go outside when I feel like it, especially in winter. Well, it's probably not going to happen. So just know, like, you came home on your red eye.
I was
You
just
were
about to say,
feeling
yeah.
like, oh my God, I am feeling exhausted. But you know what? Mood follows action. I'm going to go outdoors, get some fresh air, connect with nature, move my body, and your mood got better, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
sometimes it's just making those small incremental nudges for behavior change that can make all the difference.
Right, right. I absolutely love that quote. I've also heard it as a physiology precedes psychology. And so,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And so, and
Yeah, I
it's
like that.
100% true. And then you get in that cycle of when you feel better, you want to do more. And so it's just
Yes.
building that, step by step, um, positive
Yep.
habits. And it's funny you mentioned
Yeah.
being in the cold. So my wife is from Boston and she always tells me,
Uh-huh.
it's similar to a cold plunge in the winter where you step outside and like you
Yeah.
feel that cool breeze and it makes you
Mhm.
resilient. She's like, I feel
Oh,
tougher.
yeah.
The wind, she feels good. And it's funny
Yeah.
because we're now moving to Tampa, but hey, we'll get more nature down there as well
Okay.
with some heat, sunshine, and some water.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So speaking of water, let's transition over to that. Is
Mhm.
there any benefits
Yeah.
that we know? I feel like when people go to the beach or they're in water, they feel calmer. Is there like a
Mhm.
scientific basis behind that?
Yeah. So, in fact, just last month we had the one of the world leading experts of blue spaces, Wallace J. Nichols, who spoke for us, and his book is Blue Mind. It's a wonderful book, and he's got a great thing he loves to do when he gives talks. He holds a blue marble, and he hands out these blue marbles whenever he's at conferences. And what he has you do is you hold the blue marble at arm's length, and you look at it, and he said, that is in space when the astronauts look down. That's exactly what they see when they look at the Earth.
Wow.
It's a blue marble. And that's how important blue spaces are to the Earth, right? And really that connection. And if you look at our physiological bodies, like we're mostly water, right? And fluids. And even like the salt water of the oceans and just the saline, the salt levels of our own bodies. Like there's so many reciprocal
Hmm.
connections there. So the research, I would say, is more robust in green spaces, but that does not discount blue spaces at all. There was a study that was done fairly recently looking at adult midlife self reported well being. And what they found were that midlifers, I'm going to put myself in that category, being in my mid 50s, is they found that those people who spent time when they were younger at blue spaces. And remember, blue spaces is not just ocean. So oceans, ponds, streams, lakes, waterfalls, rivers, these are all blue spaces. The more time they spent there as youth tended to translate to higher well-being scores in midlife. And the thought kind of behind that is spending time in blue spaces. You had this felt safe there, this connected, this curiosity, just these joyful memories, hopefully. And so, therefore, you probably kept gravitating to those as you were getting older. And that translates to improved well-being scores.
Wow.
So the point being, I'm like, we're not in early life anymore. I mean, my kids really aren't either. But if I've got friends or family or grandkids one day to really to take young people to blue spaces, because it could improve their outcomes. But yeah, like a lot of really, when we look at nature exposure, green spaces, blue spaces, they're going to have a lot of overlap of that calming, of that soft fascination. And actually, Rachel and Stephen Kaplan, who were researchers out of the University of Michigan, coined the theory of attention restoration theory. And that really is anytime we are in nature, our cognitive processes are they just like kind of stream down and we're able to think clearer. And instead of like a bazillion synapses going at one time, it's just funneled into this soft fascination where creativity is bolstered and productivity. And they've even done cognitive testing of having people giving them a test and then having them go for a walk in nature and coming back, and they actually
Hmm.
perform better on some cognitive tests and creativity tests of just being out in nature. So there is something that on a brain level that truly goes on, that which comes back to this attention restoration theory.
That's incredible. It's really cool to hear that, it doesn't even have to be a big body of water, but even a stream or a pond, just having those
Mm-hmm.
effects
Mm-hmm.
of, what it might be. And I think the cool part about this too is like as we're going through the elements is that they have this gentle energy about them, but at the same time, they're like forces
Mm-hmm.
of nature, right? I mean, you can't mess with
Yeah,
a rush of water or a lot of fire and sun. And they're just so powerful in the energies that they hold. So it's kind of cool to
absolutely.
see that contrast. Um, so moving on now to forest bathing. So I know the Japanese
Yeah.
have a word for
Yes.
this called Shinrin Yoku. And this is
Yes.
something that's part of their culture, getting into the forest, the greenery.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there are
Mm-hmm.
also certain chemicals that we
Mm-hmm.
as humans can take in that help with respiratory function and whatnot. But you being the expert, take me through a little bit about
Yeah.
forest bathing and hiking and what kind of benefits there are for that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll start with some of the origins of
Yeah.
Shinrin Yoku in Japan. It originated in about 1982. And the reason why this came about is that in Japan, they were looking at ways to reduce stress in their workforce. So this is
Hmm.
workplace wellness 101, right? 1.0 back in the
Wow.
80s. Like nowadays, this is all trendy, right? We're in the
Yeah.
2024 and we're like, we need a workplace chief wellness officer at our company. Well,
Right.
this is back in the early 80s in Japan. And so they put about $1.5 million into this to really look at, could forest bathing help reduce stress, and therefore could this improve productivity and less illness in their workers. And one of the primary investigators, who's still a prolific researcher in this field, is Dr. King Lee. And he did some of the very early Shinrin Yoku forest bathing studies. And he was particularly interested in immune function. And we know, we were in medical school, or anyone who's been in college or had been stressed out, like you go through a really, really stressful period, maybe it's finals, and you study and you study and you study and you don't sleep, and then finally finals over and you've got time off and you get sick, right? Because we know that stress inhibits our immune function. And so Dr. King Lee speculated that being out in the forest could reduce stress, and that reducing that stress could actually boost our immune system. So he looked at natural killer cell activity. So
Hmm.
natural killer cell activity is involved in immunity, and could even, like, people who had high levels of natural killer cell activity had a lower incident rates of cancer, whether and as people with lower natural killer cell activity could have a higher incident rate of cancer. So his first one of his first studies was he took participants um, out into the forest for 2 days and measured their natural killer cell activity. So he measured at baseline and at day one and day two. And he saw that their natural killer cell activity went up just being out in the forest for 2 days. So then they wondered, well, maybe it's just that they're away from home. We gave them a vacation from home and they didn't have to wash dishes and do laundry. And maybe that was the case. So they took those same participants, and instead of going to the forest, they went to an urban environment, a big city with concrete buildings and loud noises. And they did the same thing, measured natural killer cell activity at baseline, at day one, day two, and they did not see that bump at all. So it, they came back to saying, well, it must be something about the forest. And what was really interesting, when I give talks, I love to talk about how nature is my favorite prescription because of, minimal side effects, and only side effects are going to be positive ones instead of
Hmm.
adverse side effects. Cost, right? Pharmaceuticals
Right.
are so expensive. Go outdoors, it's usually free. And duration, half-life, like medications that I prescribe, you prescribe usually every day or twice a day or maybe 3 times a day. Very few medications are monthly, or maybe some injectables every 6 months, but half-lives of pharmaceuticals are generally very short. When they looked at this natural killer cell activities, those people who went into the forest for 2 days, they had the bump in natural killer cell, went back home, they ended up measuring natural killer cell activity at 7 days and at 30 days. And even at 30 days, they still had a higher level of baseline natural killer cell activity than they did. So, you going out for your run today, right,
Yeah.
is going to help your immune system for the next 30 days, which is just
Wow.
amazing. And then after that, some larger studies that went on, where they would do some crossover, where they would have people go into the forest for a day and sit for 15 minutes and gently walk for 15 minutes. And then the next day they would go to urban environments. And what they found was, in this study, that the subjects had decreased salivary cortisol level when they were in the forest. They had decreased heart rates, and they had decreased systolic and diastolic blood pressures. So clearly activating our parasympathetic nervous system when we spend time in the forest. And people always ask me, do I have to be out in the forest all day? And I'm like, well, Dr. Outdoors would love to do that. I'd love to, like, just live it, but we've got jobs and we've got, responsibilities.
Yeah.
So really what the researchers showed is the nature dose is about 20 minutes per day. If you could do more, that's great. But really, that the dose that I prescribe, that I feel should be attainable, is 20 minutes per day. And again, you can break that down into increments. If you can do your 10 minutes in the morning to get that early morning sunshine exposure, and then maybe, 10 minutes at lunch or 10 minutes in the evening, shooting for 20 minutes per day or 120 minutes per week is what the research really shows. We find the benefit.
Gotcha. Now, can that just be outdoors, or would you recommend even specifically
Yeah.
trying to go more towards a park or somewhere
I,
with more trees?
I am gonna say
Okay.
outdoors, right? And even people who live in big cities, like there's tree canopies, like,
Hmm.
and so you talked about the chemicals. Let me come back
Yeah.
to that. So yes, phytoncides. So phyton means plant, right? We know that because plants that we talk about nutrition, those are carry phytonutrients.
Yeah.
So phyton plant cidal antibacterial.
Hmm.
So anything that is living and green and growing, so our trees, our bushes, our plants, our house plants, they produce these phytoncides, which are organic volatile compounds. And why do they produce them? Well, they produce them to protect themselves from getting ill. They emit these so that they can stay and prosper. Whenever we are around these green spaces, these plants, these trees, these shrubs, we actually inhale these phytoncides. So that can help our own immune system. It can also help with just concentration and helping us feel more refreshed. And coming back to Dr. King Lee, the prolific researcher, he actually did a small study a number of years ago. It was only 12 subjects, and each subject got their own hotel room. And 6 of the rooms were emitted with these organic volatile compounds. It was actually hinoki stem oil from a Japanese tree. And so they were emitting phytocides into 6 of the rooms. And then the other 6 rooms, they were emitting ode to nothing. After 3 days, the subjects came out and they tested natural killer cell activity. The people who were inhaling the phytoncides, their natural killer cell activity was increased by 20%, and there was no increase in the controls. And then the people who were sleeping with the phytoncides stated they felt more refreshed. So a small study, but still, it makes you believe that just being around trees and inhaling those phytoncides, a knock on wood, Dr. Outdoors, I'm outdoors every day. I think because I follow the lifestyle medicine pillars,
Hmm.
no one's perfect, but I rarely get sick, right? And I think to myself, gosh, I wonder if it's because I'm inhaling phytoncides all the time. Can't hurt.
Yeah. Now, I know this is not the advice that either of us would give because it still keeps people indoors, but I feel like we're all, I mean, I don't feel like it, but we definitely are in a world where we look at hacks and we're trying to get quick fixes. And
Mhm.
so people may hear, oh, well, I can maybe use essential oils, or I can get a
Mm.
little water fountain, in my room, or whatever it might be, or even those skylights or happy lights that people are now using as they wake up. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, is there a use case for
Yeah.
those, or?
So I will say this: the best thing is to be go outside. However, are there situations that you don't live in a safe area? The air quality is too bad.
Hmm.
You are struggling with mental health and you really don't feel you can leave your apartment or your house. That's where absolutely. And sound bites, right? People will say, well, virtual, can I just listen to nature? And there was a study that looked at sound bites. And so if you open your windows and either the participants either listen to 6 minutes of bird song, so melodic bird song, or they listen to 6 minutes of urban noises of loud horns and sirens and just boisterous sounds. And what they found was anxiety and feelings of paranoia decreased with listening to the bird song, and feelings of depression increased listening to those traffic sounds. So, if you're at home and you can't leave, you've had maybe a really busy day, you're like working from home, you're like, I'm on Zoom calls from, morning until night, open up your windows, put on, some music in the background, YouTube of nature sounds. Yes, get a fountain, get some essential oils. So I would say that the real thing is going to be the best and optimal, but there's situations that you just can't do that. So, we're at the University of Michigan Hospital. It's really cool because when a lot of nurses will work 12-hour shifts, and so they don't have the ability to go outdoors. So they have these 3 of them these simulated nature rooms, and they are incredible. So you go into these rooms, really comfortable chairs, and they have blankets that you can use. You can light candles, and a huge wall that's a screen, and you can select what kind of naturescape you want to watch, and it's real nature. You can go to a rainforest, and the sound is there, and the scenery is changing, and it's like 15 minutes, and so it's really been utilized for nurses to recharge when they're on a long shift, to just feel like I'm connecting with nature. I can't
Yeah.
actually go outside in nature, but getting the benefits and having some great results.
Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. I love it. You're putting context to it, right? So I guess there is a way we could prescribe that. So that's always key to hear,
Hmm.
especially as people do and may live in unsafe environments or food deserts and things like
Yeah.
that, where they're unable to really go and connect
Hmm.
with Earth as much as they want to. Um,
Yeah.
as we're talking about this, it's just crazy to me how we don't learn this. Like we just
No.
there's
No.
nowhere that we talk about forest bathing and the data behind it, even though it's so strong.
Yeah.
Are these really just siloed at conferences and lifestyle medicine, or how do we get this into the hands of medical students, residents?
Well, when you talk about all the pillars of lifestyle medicine,
Yeah.
I was not taught any of these in
Right.
medical school, right? My nutrition, they called it nutrition, I think was like tube feeding or a Krebs cycle or
Right.
something like
Yeah, so the
that,
biochemistry of it.
right? And
Yeah.
I mean, right. And then exercise, I don't think we talked about that. Sleep, no, definitely did not talk about that. No, so we really need to shift this whole paradigm from a disease oriented sick care system, and how we approach, my medical school training was system based, disease based. Here's a disease, learn about it, here's the pill, the pharmaceutical to make it go away, here's how you diagnose it. So we're all about, we need to get to root cause
Yeah.
of disease. And really, our pillars of lifestyle medicine, when you look at chronic disease as an internist, this has been my whole entire career, right? Of managing chronic diseases. So,
Yeah.
chronic diseases, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, chronic kidney disease, even dementia, obesity, 89% are lifestyle driven.
Right.
So when I see new patients and I'm taking a thorough family history and they say, well, I'm bound to have a heart attack and I'm going to get diabetes. And I say, well, why is that? Well, everyone in my family gets these diseases, so I'm bound to get it. And I definitely validate that genes run in
Hmm.
families. But then I also say, so do lifestyles and recipes. And the good news behind this is, your genes are not your destiny.
Right.
Just because this runs in your family does not mean you have to get these diseases. In fact, you've come to the right place because I'm a lifestyle medicine physician, and I'm going to educate you. I'm going to empower you, and I'm going to support you to learn how to make lifestyle changes. And that can be overwhelming. It can be exciting news for people, but it can also be overwhelming because it's like, how do I change everything that I've been doing? And I really think we need to emphasize just, small incremental changes, 1% better. Like, if you don't eat any fruits or vegetables, could you start eating one a day? Right? If you don't move your body and you've got an iPhone or an Apple Watch, could you start by trying to get 1,000 steps per day? Great, you did that. Maybe you can up it to two. Are you staying up really late on your phone and scrolling? Well, could you try to, put your phone down and try to get to bed by 10:30 or 11 and get up, 7 or 8 hours later? So small incremental changes. So you're right. Like, not only does the public not know this, but clinicians
Yeah. We
don't
don't.
know this,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that, I am a board certified lifestyle medicine physician. I'm on our membership committee. So trying to grow our membership. We have over 11,000 members across the world for the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And you don't have to be a physician to be a member. As long as you have a master's degree, we'll take you, right?
Hmm.
So we've got, all different backgrounds. And we're now about 5,000 physicians who are board certified in lifestyle medicine. So the more that we can educate people within our field, then the people within our field are going to disseminate that information to all individuals, because nowadays I feel it's malpractice if we are not educating our patients about this, because it is so powerful. And like you said, they all feed off of each other. Once you
Hmm.
start doing one pillar,
Yeah.
you're gonna probably want to do another one,
Right.
and then you're gonna probably do another one. And nature is medicine. That's, as you know, I'm a huge advocate for the seventh unofficial pillar of
Yeah.
lifestyle medicine. I have a publication out that was released about a year ago in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine, advocating for this. I talk about this. Thank you for the platform today that I can try
Yeah,
to
of
reach
course.
more people. And all of these are very simple. And you're right, people are into biohacking. And the biohacking probably helps. Like I do some biohacking within my concierge practice, absolutely. But we start with the fundamentals of lifestyle. If you don't have those down, the biohacking's not gonna make it, right? So really, I feel that we need to get to true prevention. And as a practicing physician for many, many years, and when I was working for large organizations, they would say, "Hey, doc, okay, we need you to do prevention. We need you to make sure your patients are getting their colonoscopies, their breast, their mammograms. If they're a smoker, get their low dose CAT scans." And to me, I'm like, that's early detection. I need to start more upstream, right, with true prevention, getting
Hmm.
to underlying root cause, so that we're not detecting those cancers or those disease processes when they're already there. I want to prevent them from, the get go. And we're all about longevity and
Hmm.
increasing lifespan, but I really feel that we need to emphasize increasing our well span. No one wants to spend their last decade of life in illness and
Yeah,
bedbound, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. So,
Yeah,
how do you
yeah.
recommend clinicians who are in the traditional model, who maybe have 10, 15 minutes with a patient, who are excited about
Mhm.
lifestyle medicine, right? I mean, they see a patient, they say, "Oh my God, I could fix your sleep hygiene and you might need to turn your lights down. But oh, wait, you're also eating this. Let's change this diet. And oh, let's get a little bit more weightlifting in," right? There's so many different things that we
Mhm.
can do to really help our patients, but sometimes that can just lead to overwhelm for the patient. How do you recommend clinicians kind of just go about helping our patients go in the right direction when it comes to the sixth and the unofficial seventh pillar?
Yeah. Well, first off, clinicians really need to try to do this themselves. There's been studies that clinicians who exercise are more apt to prescribe exercise to their patients, right? So I think first and foremost, I hope and I want our clinicians to take care of themselves first so that they can offer that to others. So that being said, I would say, we talk about SMART goals all the time, and
Hmm.
that's, setting a goal that's specific and relevant and, attainable, and really to just break it down. And again, that 1% better. So
Hmm.
I think I agree. I think it would be very overwhelming. You're like, there's 7 pillars, and here's what you need to do for ever them. So, in a primary care setting, when you're going to be seeing these patients back again, or you have maybe a health coach or a nurse that can follow up, or an MA, is starting small. And again, all the pillars are really interconnected, but maybe asking the patient themselves, like, here are the pillars. Where do you feel
Mm,
like you want to start?
yeah.
Where do you feel like you're really struggling? And for, a lot of people, that's probably going to be nutrition, the standard American diet, right?
Right.
Stands for sad, because it is truly
Right.
sad. And really just at first trying to limit ultra processed foods. Oh my God, right then
Hmm.
and there. That's huge, right? And sometimes it's better to present not restrictive of, you can't have this, you can't have that. Can you do more of the good stuff,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So on your plate, could you try to do, a salad a day? Could you try to do a vegetable, a whole vegetable or a whole piece of fruit? So starting small and building off that. But I think it's important to have a partnership and a dialogue
Yeah.
with your patient to figure out, like, where do they want to start? What do they want to do? And really going through that SMART goal, because what I think, would be appropriate may not be appropriate at all. Like, oh my God, I can't do all that. So really coming up with, confidence levels of, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident do you feel like you could do this goal we set up for you? If they are a 7 or below, nope, got to modify that goal. If they're a 7, 8, 9, then you're like, okay, let's see how you do with this goal. And again, this is about empowering. And that's what I love about lifestyle medicine, and empowering people and supporting them and changing their behaviors, is I can give them information, I can give them support, but they do it, right?
Hmm.
So much better than, here's a pill, take it every day. That's not empowering
Right.
anyone, right?
Right.
That's not having our patients take ownership. But if I say, I want you to try to go for a walk, a couple times a week for 20 minutes. And they come back and they're like, I did it. And I'm like, they're like, thank you so much. I'm like, no, you did it. Like, I just gave you the idea and gave you the confidence that you could do this and that you would feel good doing it. So I think it's so wonderful as a clinician. We talk about burnout and clinical medicine, and really lifestyle medicine for me has been the antidote to that, because I really feel like I'm truly helping individuals,
Yeah,
and, seeing people get healthier and happier along the way is just the biggest reward.
for sure. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Sunderman, as we come to a close here, just want to ask you, what is next for you? Tell me a little bit about what you're doing with lifestyle medicine and the organization.
Wow. I'm doing a lot and it's so fun. So, like I said, I'm on the ACLM membership committee. I became a fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine last year, which is sort of the highest ranking you can get. Very honored to be a fellow. I'm on the ACLM planning committee. If anyone wants to come to the most amazing conference, our conference is in October, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine annual conference. Keynotes are incredible this year, and it's down in Orlando, Florida. I would encourage anyone to go. If you can't make it, we have a virtual option as well. So I joined a concierge practice that is focused on all of this stuff, and it's wonderful because I have a lot more time with patients. I'm learning about, I'm continuing to learn, which is wonderful. I'm doing a lot of speaking engagements, talking about nature as medicine, but other topics as well, which just has been so much fun for me. Doing lots of podcast interviews with Robin Tiger, who you've had on the Stress Free MD, you've had on your podcast before. We have a program called Revive, and that is lifestyle medicine well-being coaching. We did a cohort for physicians in the spring, and we had amazing outcomes because physicians don't learn this, right? And
Right.
so we wanted to teach physicians really how to take care of themselves first and foremost, and hopefully they can translate that to patients. And so we're doing some great stuff with Revive. We're actually hosting a retreat in Africa, in
Oh,
Uganda, in
wow.
January. So CME credit. So if any of your listeners are any health profession, it's for health professionals, because we are offering CME health professionals, their families and friends who want to come join us in Uganda, and we're going to really connect with nature.
Wow, that sounds awesome. I mean, yeah, definitely excited to put that in the show notes. So anyone, definitely go to the show notes. We'll link everything there. We'll also link your bios. And so tell us a little bit about where
Yeah.
we can find you on social media, and even if people may want to ask you about your concierge practice.
Yeah, so my concierge practice is Lifespan Medicine, and I do telehealth, but then we also have offices in LA, Dallas, Miami, and we'll be opening one in New York City. So I do travel to those offices to see patients in person, but I also do telehealth. And then you can find me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I share a lot of information about nature's medicine on LinkedIn. So Melissa Sunderman, and then I'm on Instagram. So I have two Instagram handles to make it a little bit challenging for
Yep.
myself. My two Instagram handles are the Doctor Outdoors, and then my other one is Motivator Melissa. So I would love to have you follow me and connect with me. If you are a member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine or would like to join, you can become a member of our Nature as Medicine subcommittee. We meet on the first Tuesday of every month. Like I said, we had Wallace J. Nichols. We have all of the top researchers and authors and advocates of nature's medicine from all over the world who come and speak to our committee.
Amazing. Well, Dr. Sunderman, before I ask you the last question, I just really want to say thank you for coming on here. Your aura and energy, it's definitely fun. It's relaxing, and I'm even more excited to go out in nature and really go through the benefits. And even with my patients, I'm at a rehab hospital. We have a courtyard, and so I'm going to definitely start writing out more orders to take the patients out in the courtyard and enjoy the sun and the nature around them. But yeah, thank you. We'll definitely get everyone to your Instagram. I mean, you mentioned biking, but you also run marathons. I see you hiking. You're more than a motivation. You're also inspiration for a lot of us.
I just ran a Yeah,
Yeah.
I just ran a marathon. Actually, I paced a marathon on Sunday. No,
Oh, wow.
Saturday. So 3 days ago. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. You're so active. It's definitely incredible. And, for me, coming out of residency, going to join American College of Lifestyle Medicine and just try to get more involved. It's awesome to see the good work that you're putting out there, along with a lot of the other previous guests that we've had. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thanks for having me.
yeah,
It's been great.
for sure. Last question for you here, and I know this could totally be a whole nother hour, but it's how do we put the health back in healthcare?
lifestyle medicine, right? And that's why I said, let's just, we need to start upstream and getting to underlying root cause and really focusing on well care and not sick care. And the pillars of lifestyle medicine, that's how we put the health back in, and really believing and empowering individuals that they can do this, because so many people think, no, people aren't going to change. But lifestyle medicine is really the answer to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, Dr. Sunderman.
You're welcome.